Now, when we talk about compensation, I want to volunteer, like takes, one person goes off on, mute, and then tell me when you hear about the word compensation or salaries, what does that mean to you? And then what does advanced compensation mean to you right now as of this? So like your understanding of what is covered in compensation and what is covered in advanced comp. If someone wants to volunteer for just one part and another person could do the second part.
So the compensation corresponds to the basic elements of employee remuneration, like the basic salary, whether the worker is a full-time worker, part-time worker, whether the payout is going to be weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. So this covers the basic elements of compensation.
Yep, that's right. And then in terms of the actual structure, when we say compensation, we're talking about the salary plans. And typically it's going to be, one is going to be the salary plan, and one is going to be another type of salary plan called the hourly plan. Obviously, hourly mainly for US employees or contractors or fixed terms. And you're going to hear this one word called compensation basis. Okay. Workday uses the word basis a lot. Okay. Whenever you see the word basis, just think formula. Okay. So how does Workday calculate when it says compensation basis? So think, what is the formula that Workday uses to calculate something? So every company at the time of implementation, they have decided what is the compensation basis we're going to use. 95% of the companies, they just use, standard, we'll just call it standard base pay. Maybe 1 or 2% of the companies, they go beyond standard base pay, and their compensation basis will take into account base pay plus allowance plus, maybe there's some like one time, or for commission folks, there might be, they're just called commission targets. And what they will do is they'll have one compensation basis, and that will just be called standard base pay. And then they might have another basis, which might be a combination of base pay, allowance, commission, and they might call that a different name, but it will still be compensation basis, but it will be the second compensation basis. What the reason the majority of the companies don't use, anything beyond standard base pay is because when you need to calculate anything beyond that, you could just do that within a report or within the merit grid without having to do all of the work of, setting it up as a compensation basis. But occasionally you'll be asked to, you might be, unless you're at an implementation time, no one's going to ask you about the compensation basis, but it's good to know what that is. And I'll show you guys in Workday where it's located. And there might be basically 1 or 2 of them. That's the basic compensation. Now, advanced compensation is going to have things everything that's needed for annual compensation review. So that includes merit plans, stock plan, bonus plans. Now, most companies, whether they're doing like an annual increment or they might do, it might be an annual thing. Most companies do an annual, but there's still, some companies that might do, semi-annual, and things that will feed into this. So merit is like, is for our annual increment. And how much of a salary an employee, there might be an increment budget. So the merit plan will help you calculate what that budget is. Stock plan, bonus plan, these are assigned to the employees at the employee level. We're not getting into the whole definition yet, but just as a high level, when we say annual compensation review, it could be 1 or more of these plans. And just to be aware that they're assigned to employees. Like obviously we set up these, we configure these, and then they get assigned to the employees. And obviously it's not going to be assigned to everybody. So just to be more specific, it gets assigned to eligible employees. So when you're meeting with HR and they're talking about like, okay, we need to do an annual compensation review, talk about the requirements gathering, like, okay, are we going to do only merit, which consists of salary changes. It might also consist of promotions. You might promotions and salary changes are going to be two different things, because obviously, there are salary changes without a promotion, and then there's promotions which includes a job code change and a salary change. And there also might be what's called a lump sum payment. So you have to ask your client group exactly what do they want to cover within this compensation review, lump sum payments. Okay.
No, I thought somebody will ask about what is the requirement of lump sum. What are the scenarios when lump sum will be required? Maybe retention or something like that, if you want to comment on that.
Sure. So that's exactly most of the time is there might be some particular group or a manager that might like to give for retention purposes. They don't want to make it part of their salary increase, and they're not getting a promotion. So they might do, a lump sum, which is similar to a one-time payment. And, like you said, is vast majority of the time is for retention purposes. And the question would be okay, are you going to have one budget for all of these three things, or are you going to have separate budgets? So, for simplicity, it helps to have just one budget. And then whenever there's a promotion or a lump sum, it comes out of the same budget. So this plan gets assigned to the eligible employees, and you run your reports, and then you do what's called audits. Let's just call it budget audits.
So I will just ask you one follow-up question on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So is there any way wherein we can run the merit cycle just to take care of lump sum? I mean, we ran merit cycle. We took care of whatever it needs to be taken care. But then we had got some requests around the retention, maybe after 2 months or so, for a bunch of people across the organization, which needs to be taken care of. So can we run merit cycle just for that lump sum with the budget that is allocated to it?
I mean, technically you can, but it wouldn't make sense to. If you have already done the merit, that means when you finalized it, right? When you closed merit 2 months before, you closed that cycle. So whatever budget that was there, now within Workday, this process is now closed. You might need to do lump sum as a one-time payment. If there was budget left over, but it's not part of this merit process, and you will not launch merit again, because it will just, from a business process point of view, but it wouldn't make sense, right, to launch merit again. So what I've seen happen is...
I will tell you the scenario. I will tell you the scenario in my own company. So here, basically, we have budget every quarter for retention. Okay, so that is the thing I wanted to understand. So if you are getting budget for lump sum or maybe that retention every quarter, how to handle it in Workday?
You do it as a one-time payment. Once you decide
one-time payment is right for the employees, but what kind of process to be run in the Workday or configure it? I mean, I was always thinking that if it would be merit cycle, I mean, then any number of time you can run the merit cycle, right? It's not necessary that just for an annual cycle you need to run it.
Right, but it would be weird to launch the merit without doing merit and just doing lump sum on it. Like I said, technically you can, but
okay,
you're still
just to rephrase the question, we have maybe 4 cycles or quarterly cycles, not annual cycle, quarterly merit cycle.
Sure.
To adjust maybe promotions or merit cycles.
Yes, you can. Whenever you launch it, you have to indicate what time frame you're launching it for, right? So, for example, if we're going to launch it now, and right now it's it's the third quarter, so you could select hey, this is going to be from say 4/1 to just say it's going to be for the second quarter. So you have to indicate the the start and the end date. So you're running it for the second quarter, and you're running it now, right? You're initiating it in third quarter.
Okay.
And then
you can also take care of quarterly pays as well, right? Because there is a concept of quarterly pay here. So that can be taken care as part of the cycle, right?
Yes. So when you're creating the plan, don't create it as an annual plan. So when we when we actually create the plan, the system looks at it is this a annual plan or a quarterly plan, or so if the merit plan is annual, then when we actually run it, it asks for what's called the process period end date. So let's just say the process period end is going to be December 31, 2023. And the system will say that, what kind of plan is this? And then it's going to see that it was an annual plan. So based on us, we entered December 31, but because it's an annual plan, the system is going to look at everybody from January 1st, 2023 to December 31st. And then it's going to, so for that 1 year period, it's going to take the base salary and it's going to multiply by our increment percentage. Let's just call it merit, percentage, and, obviously times it by all the employees, and it's going to come up with a budget. And this budget is going to be based on the whole year because, majority of the time the merit plan is made like an annual plan. Of course, you could make a quarterly plan as well. You could make, whatever type of plan that you want, and you could just run it many times. But just be aware that when we run it, we only enter the period end date. Workday will calculate the start date based on the type of plan. So don't think like, okay, well, where's the start date? There is no start date because Workday will come up with that. And there's no field to enter the start date for it. But yeah, a lot of fast moving companies will need to do it more than once a year.
So if we set up this plans quarterly and if we run the merit process quarter wise, can we run it multiple times for the same quarter?
No, it would not make sense to do that from a...
Hey, ZaranTech now offers SAP corporate training. That's right. Train your workforce in SAP with our comprehensive program. We offer customized courses, certified trainers, and hands-on labs for both individuals and businesses. Our standout features? Bespoke training, fully configured servers for practice, in-house materials, and a dedicated LMS. Plus, get session recordings and 24/7 support. From functional to technical modules, we have got it all. Choose ZaranTech for SAP training and watch your team excel. Learn, upskill, succeed with ZaranTech.
Business perspective.
Okay, let's say just so the components here, like, salary changes or promotional lump sum. Let's say if someone has run for lump sum payments for second quarter, and now, business has come back and they want to run merit process again because they didn't include promotions with the lump sum payment as well. They want to run for promotions as well. So is there any technically possible, or is there any downside of running it?
No, technically it's possible because previous time you only did lump sum, you did not do merit and you did not do promotion. Now, if you had done merit and the merit increase was done at the end of the quarter, then you're in a little bit of a technical quandary, right? Because at the end of the quarter, now because of the merit increase, the person already has a higher salary than they did during the previous quarter. So it doesn't make logical sense to run merit itself and give merit, within this more than once in a time frame. But if you only did lump sum, then obviously you could go and do that. And when you do launch it, you do have to tell the system that, are you going to take into account the salary that's at the end of the period, or are you going to look at the salary as it changed throughout the period? So that will come into play as well. But yeah, these are interesting, I would say not fairly common scenarios, but yeah, it could happen.
I think the process will have different statuses, right? If once the process is in completed status, will it be really available for rerun? I mean, I'm not sure about it.
Not the same one. You initiate it again.
Right, the new process, right? The new process with what are the other components, but not the same process.
Correct, because once you initiate it and then you do the reviewer reviews it, you submit whatever the changes, then you finalize it. And then that's it. You cannot open this back up again. And then you want to do it again, you initiate a brand new one.
I just wanted to have your question answered.
Okay, so one more question is let's say I've run the merit plane for second quarter for salary changes. And later I realized, okay, the criteria for picking up the changes for eligible employees was wrong. And we have missed 100 people. So in that case, I would like to run it again. So what would be the ideal scenario? I mean, what usually business do? So let's say, due to incorrect criteria, they have left out 100 people.
It depends how far you've gone into it. If you realized it the same day, maybe it's best to cancel and relaunch it. If it's already been a week, then it probably makes sense to launch a different one for that population that got missed. But if you caught it within the same day, I would recommend canceling that and launching it again. Now, I have seen between myself, maybe about 10 merit processes, between my teammates and colleagues, we never had a situation where anybody missed like 100. I mean, you could miss like, maybe 3 or 4, and that's usually because the person was on leave or, but there should never be a situation where you miss 100.
Just hold back, because once the demo is on, there is a workflow when you can realize which all the population is not going to be included. I think it will show us, and what is the reason for that, whether it is a long leave or whether it is a compensation change which is in progress. I think is going to touch upon it. So once you look into it, I think you will understand. And secondly, nothing happens. I mean, you have different checks and balances. Just commenting on your behalf. There are different checks and balances unless you completely review it. I mean, there is a step, right? They'll finalize it, review it, look at the statement. And compensation is not salary change. Unless you run a process which push this compensation to a particular effective date into the HR, into that salary, it is not going to change, Neeraj. I mean, you understand that, right? So don't worry about, even if you run, nothing is going to happen. Compensation is not a salary. It is just, you can look at maybe anybody's profile that what he or she can get as part of salary or compensation. But it's not direct change to the salary. I'm just wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, I didn't get the part about it's not part of salary, but
now, why it's not a part of direct salary? Like once you push the compensation, obviously, I mean, whatever the compensation is.
No. So see, generally, customer basically completes their cycle. Maybe let's assume 1st April is effective date of the salary change, right? So maybe 28th February itself, suppose the compensation cycle is completed, but the effective date is set maybe after 30 days or so. So on that particular effective date, only that salary is going to change. You running compensation process, realizing that I have done something wrong, that gives you a lot of time again to create new process, and then finalize or maybe push that particular changes to the salary only when you are satisfied.
Okay.
I mean, please correct me. I mean, you are the expert here. I'm just trying to comment on this.
No, these are all good comments, and I think my comment would be that there's also, beyond just the setup within Workday, there should be a wholesome project plan with like different team members. So there's a role for the what's called the HR. It's usually the HR business partner role. There is the compensation role, and then there is the Workday consultant role, right? So you have, at the minimum, you have these 3 different groups. They're part of it. And, the role of the HR business partner is going to be, they'll help you define who is eligible. Like in general, they'll tell you the population, and then they'll tell you like such and such population is, and you will have to get out of them, like, how do you define that population based on certain criteria? And they will work with, actually, there's also a finance role up here. I'll just call it FP&A, and I'm going to add it to the same line over here. But FP&A and HR business partners together, they will, they'll come up with some kind of budget as well. What is the criteria for who is eligible? The compensation role, they should help you audit the budget, right? They might also tell you the budget, so everything related to the budget will come from the compensation person. Compensation team, they will work with, HR business partners and FP&A, but from the help that you will need, these people should audit who is eligible for it, and they will audit it. They will audit, is the budget correct? Now, as the Workday, we were talking about, like, how do we audit that and make sure like a large population is not going to get missed in the merit launch cycle, right? So I would just want to point out that when we do launch merit or the annual review process, there's multiple teams that you work with, and you rely on them to audit for certain things. So like finance and HR business partner and the compensation team, they will define who is eligible. They'll give you the criteria, or they're not going to give you the criteria. You will have to kind of like pull the criteria out of them. They will just simply say, okay, all engineering, right? Or they'll say like, okay, everybody who's hired, since a particular time frame. But you have to make it like very specific criteria, like, okay, which job families, which locations. But once you get that criteria and once you get the budget, and then as the Workday consultants, we do the configuration within Workday we do the configuration, we assign the plans, and then once the plans are assigned, we do the first level audit. They just call it like first level audit to make sure that we are putting the right number of people who should be part of the plan for eligible list. So once the plans are assigned, I make a list. Okay, here's the list of everybody who's going to be part of it. I give it to the HR partners, and then they do the second level. So there's going to be everybody who's eligible, but then when they look at the list, then they will realize, oh, this person had a recent salary change, so do not make that person eligible again. They will make some modifications like that. Then you will come back to Workday and you'll remove the merit plan assignment from that worker. So anyways, there's going to be a back and forth audit. You need at least 1 week for that. That's the eligible list audit. Then there's going to be the budget audit. In Workday, you have reports for the Workday budget audit, and Workday will give you the budget based on, any different criteria, like here's the budget for everybody in the supervisory org or cost center or the team. But basically you will have the budget. The compensation person will then help you audit the budget, multiple times. And whatever their budget is, the Workday budget, their budget will be outside of Workday. And the budget that you calculate within Workday, obviously they should match. And there's going to be, fewer iterations and adjustments until they do match. And it's going to take time for that. So you usually need at least a week to just do the audits back and forth. So because of the eligibility, because of the budget, you're not going to miss like unexpected number of population.
This budget, in your experience,
What sets ZaranTech apart in SAP corporate training? It's our unique blend of expertise and innovation. We offer customized courses tailored to each client's needs, ensuring relevant, targeted learning. Our vast trainer database brings you wisdom from the best in the field. Need resources? Access our extensive training material repository anytime. We are all about measurable results, providing detailed student metrics to track progress. And we don't just teach, we build community. Join our thriving social media network, connecting learners beyond boundaries. With ZaranTech, you are not just training, you are transforming your SAP expertise.
Did you get a budget or did you calculate the budget out of maybe Workday? Do you follow top down or it's a bottom up? What kind of customers you have seen? Whether you get the budget and configure it as a top down, or how do you do that?
It's been both. So there'll be some companies who tell you that, hey, our budget is, if you got a small company, let's just say like 500 employees, they might just give you a budget like, hey, we got a budget of like, say, $4 million. And then you enter it as a top-down budget, and then Workday will allocate that budget all the way down based on the number of headcount. Okay, so here's probably the most important, well, not the most important thing, but when Workday allocates budget, good thing to know is that, let's say, budget allocation is based only on headcount. Okay. So whether it's merit budget, bonus budget, we call it equity, the allocation is based only on headcount. And this does cause problems. And there's like unexpected expectations. Like if I have, let's say, $100 and I got, 10 employees, Workday is going to allocate $10 to each employee. Okay. Or if I have 100 stock units and Workday is going to allocate just based on the headcount. But in real life, you're going to have, you say like you got a SVP, you got a VP, you got directors, and you got managers, and then you got employees, and then you got more employees. So if you have an organization that's top heavy, they actually need a higher budget than if you got not so top heavy org. But if you use top down, Workday doesn't look at the level. It's just gonna say, hey, you got 6 people and it will just divide the budget by 6, and then it will give it to them evenly. And that's going to be wrong. Okay, so the default budget calculation is going to be wrong if you do it, but you actually have to adjust it. So you do a manual adjustment. Let me add 4 more people here to make it 10.
So you're saying top-down cannot be percentage-based. It is always a flat amount split evenly across the board.
Yeah, yes, and no one's going to be happy with it. No one's going to be happy with it because, everybody's going to get 10, and, everybody's going to get 10 stock units by default.
And we don't have any control over that?
By default, we don't.
Okay.
But, okay, so the default calculation is going to be this. For this organization, it's just going to say 10, 10, 10, 10. So what you're going to do is you could set the budget based on supervisory org. Okay. So you're going to go to each supervisory org, A, supervisory B, and supervisory C, etc. You get the point. And you will do manual entering of budget, or we could do an EIB load. And you will say that, hey, this soup org, because it's got 1 SVP and 2 VPs and 3 directors, it needs a budget of 60. This one needs a budget of 20, and then the rest of the org only will get 20. So when you enter top down, you could always adjust it by the soup org, and that's what you got to do. Like if the business will tell you that, hey, this soup org needs higher budget than these soup orgs.
But within that soup org, again, it will just, divide it equally, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not really helpful then, right? In this case, because you don't want to assign same equity to SVP and VP and director. Obviously, there will be some difference always based on their positions.
Yeah, so this is going to be here, whereas we're taking basically the overall budget and then assigning it to the soup org as, hey, this is what's available to you, and then when the reviewer, obviously they could, this is just the allocated budget. And then the reviewer, they will enter exactly how much they're going to give to each person. So it doesn't, just to calculate the budget, you don't want to develop too much on it for each person level. Doing it at the soup org level is going to be good enough. Because I always say that, hey, this is just the hypothetical budget allocation. Okay. So it's kind of like an intro into it.
Sorry, one more thing. What is the difference then? This is top down. Like, let's say if we have some number for the budget, we have entered in the system and it just divides. Workday just divides based on the hand count. So what is bottom up? Like how it calculates that?
So for bottom up, we will say, hey, everybody in the US it is going to get 3% increment. Everybody in India is going to get 12% increment, and whatever the budget is for the rest of the countries. And you put all of that in a compensation matrix, and then when you select top down, then Workday will take the sum of the formula, right? And then it will say, okay, as a sum of everybody, this is what your total budget is. And then based on the head count, it will come up with the budget for each of the orgs. In top down, we entered, 5 million, 10 million, a number, and then it allocated it to each of the orgs. And bottom up, it looks at your compensation matrix, and then it calculates it, and then obviously you will adjust it. You could adjust that as well.
Okay. So do companies use this top-down approach at all, or every company uses this bottom-up approach?
I think they actually use top-down more than bottom-up. And the reason is that because they have a certain budget, and then it's easier to just allocate that budget to the supervisory org. And, you might have 500 orgs, and, you just have them put it in an Excel sheet. You make that into an EIB and just load it. And that way, exactly how much they're getting. And it makes the audit so much easier because you're the one who's assigning how much budget each org is going to get. And you're in control of it. You know what the total is. You know how much you give to each. And you can match it up very easily against the budget that was given by finance. And it makes the auditing so much easier. Whereas otherwise, you're having Workday calculated based on some matrix, and then you say, okay, well, how come, I'm only getting this amount? but I want it to be this amount. So it's easier to manage top-down budgets in terms of doing audits.
Okay. And this headcount, so in the top-down approach, it looks like Workday calculates the headcount. So in this headcounts, I mean, does Workday include
The
leave
budget.
without paid, leave of absences associates with paid or without paid, or it's just
It does not. That's another problem. By default, budget does not take into account people on leave, people on elevate. So you will have to add those people into your budget when you're calculating. Like, if you just have the system calculated, it's not going to take those people and make them eligible. You have to actually add them. You have to make sure they're added to it. You actually have to do a manual step to make sure your LOA people are added to it.
into a headcount. And is that something which we can control?
Yes, you could control that. You just need to be aware of it. The only time it will get missed is if you're not aware of it. But now that you guys are aware of it, you will make sure that those people are taken into account. The
Okay.
budget.
Does this take into account the performance rating and gathers it from talent and performance module?
It does. Within the merit grid, we'll see there is it will show you the performance rating. Obviously, a performance rating is coming from performance reviews, which are not part of advanced comp, but obviously the rating does get pulled in, and it should be visible to the reviewers on the what's called the merit grid.
Okay.
And then you could do validations against it. Like, hey, if someone's got a high rating, then maybe they're eligible for 120% of their increase. But if someone's got a very low rating, maybe they should. You could put some kind of validation on it that controls it. And then that's going to be a topic what we call compensation matrix based ratings.